Good evening. I'd like to call this public hearing to order at 5:35 p.m. Kurt, would you mind taking the roll?
Mr. Allett, Ms. Bowers,
present.
Ms. Daniels,
here.
Ms. Green,
Present.
Mr. Madsen, here. Mr. Majors,
Here.
Ms. Williams.
And just want to note that Mr. Allett and President Williams are excused. President Williams had a prior engagement, so Mr. Allett has an excuse. So I'm going to get started right away. I'll be serving as chair for this meeting, and we're going to start with the Public Works Committee. We have Bill 10 of 2021 before us, and Kurt, would you mind reading that into the record?
Bill 10 of 2021 is an ordinance vacating and striking from the official map of the city of Harrisburg, Mercer Street, Goodyear Street, and Filson Street within the block bounded by Berry Hill Street, South 23rd Street, Brookwood Street, and South 22nd Street pursuant to Chapter 3-109 of the Codified Ordinances of the city of Harrisburg.
Thank you. So we're following protocol. We're going to have Mr. Knight. Are you going to begin?
Yep.
All right.
So the application before City Council tonight is in reference to the vacation of Mercer Street, Goodyear Street, and Filson Street for the purposes of consolidating several lots in the rights of way to be vacated into a single parcel for the development of the site and for the purposes of a project called Brookwood Commons. The Brookwood Commons project is a multi-family residential development that was of 40 buildings with 140 units. That was, I believe, initially proposed and reviewed back in maybe even 2014, 2013. But due to the vacation not having been formalized and completed and recorded with the county recorder of deeds, they are coming back through to take that final step. Last year, I believe, council voted to grant the developers, which is Brookwood Commons LP, an extension on their previously granted land development plan. And I believe they were granted a 2-year extension, during which time they were expected to get the street vacations done to formalize all the rest of the project. So with that being said, as noted, it's a kind of continuation of a project from a while ago and also from last year. So I believe council members are fairly familiar with the project, but the applicant, Joshua Jeffy, is here to my left to answer any questions that the council may have about either the street vacations themselves or the overall project.
All right, thank you. Mr. Martin, do you have anything additional to add?
No, I do not, Councilor. My name is Dwayne Martin, city engineer for the record.
And so I know prior to Mr. having Mr. Jeffy speak, you have him sworn.
We have him sworn first, because it's a public hearing. Right. We are going to ask that Bill 10, 2021 be made part of the official record and transcript accompanying it. It has the exhibits that are relevant to the petition to vacate, and that is what's before you tonight to consider. I think we'll just add that as hearing exhibit 1, and that will be what we need. I would swear the witness who is presenting this. I will note, just so there's no public confusion, we passed an ordinance to amend the way we do street vacations. This application predates that ordinance, so the new ordinance does not apply.
Thank you. And Mr. Jeffy, if you wanted to add anything, have you sworn first before?
Yes, sir.
I do.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffy. You may proceed. When I have anything that you want to add prior to opening up to questions?
No, we're excited to get started. We were hoping to get this a little bit sooner, but right when we got the extension, COVID happened. So, you know, we had a debate whether not to go knock on doors and get the petition signed when the governor said stay home. So that's accounted for some of the delay here.
All right, thank you. First, I'll open up to members, my colleagues. I'll start to my left with Councilwoman Bowers. Do you have any questions for on Bill 10?
Thank you. I just have one question. It's noted that Capital Region Water is still reviewing the application, and it was also noted by the Planning Commission. There is a condition that if required by Capital Region Water or other utility providers, the applicant shall execute easement agreements with those providers to allow access to and maintenance of existing infrastructure running through or along the right-of-way, or will have such infrastructure formally abandoned. So I just wanted to know if there was a status, if we know when you may hear from Capital Region Water, and or if you will agree to the conditions set forth by the Planning Commission.
We've been in contact with Capital Region Water, and we've got their form of easement, and we're just probably going to give them a blanket easement, and it's pretty straightforward. So that's being met and addressed.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. We'll go to here as Councilwoman Green. Do you have any questions? Thank you. Councilman Madsen.
No questions for me, thank you.
Councilwoman Daniels. And again, this has been before us before, and glad we're going through those processes. So turn it over to Mr. Grover before.
It may be appropriate to see if any of the neighboring property owners are present, which have a more standing than others in such a hearing.
Right, that was my next piece. Is there anyone in the public that wanted to speak to Bill 10 of 2021? Do you have any neighbors or? Right. And then I guess lastly to the applicant, what has been any feedback that you have received from neighbors? I know when there were other developments proposed in this area, we had some pushback. It wasn't this particular to this, but have you heard any additional information from the neighbors?
Well, the neighbors all remember because I went through, I knocked on their doors twice because we did the first petition. So I think everybody's actually going to be happy that they're going to get land they thought they owned. So, and as far as the development, right now it's an overgrown school bus parking lot. So just anything that moves those school buses makes people happy. And as long as, it's going to be a quality development, everybody's generally favorable.
Okay. And then in terms of, and I just want to make sure I think I'm looking at the right street in my head. This 23rd and Brookwood, there was a property, I think a home there right on that corner. Is it Brookwood? It's on 23rd Street. I don't have the, well, I guess where the transportation, where the bus parking lot is, there's a.
That's like but where Boyo is, that's right. 24th Street.
Oh, 24th, excuse me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next 23rd is the Union building is on 23rd.
Okay, all right. I'm looking at the wrong side then. Okay, all right. Then I think I'm good there.
Okay.
One last thing, Mr. Chairman. The city has in receipt of an affidavit from PA Media Group showing proof of publication of this hearing as required for a street vacation in the Patriot News on August the 2nd, the 7th, and the 14th, 2021, which is the 3 consecutive week requirement prior to this hearing. And this notification was published simultaneously with the notification for the hearing is to follow this.
Okay. All right, thank you. Seeing no further public comment, we can ask to have this placed on the agenda for our next legislative session. So that concludes the hearing of the Public Works Committee meeting. Excuse me, the Public Works Committee for Bill 10. Thanks. Next, we have the Community and Economic Development Committee. I'll turn it over to Mr. Madsen.
Thank you, Council Majors. Mr. Knight, are you ready? Neil, you ready?
We're ready, sir.
Okay. All right. We'll kick it off to the Law Bureau to give us an assessment of where we stand in the legal process.
This is a public hearing in accordance with the Municipal Planning Code for the comprehensive plan that was sent forth to the Harrisburg Planning Commission by the City Council in 2014. The members of the council and city clerk have a 2-volume set of exhibits The first simply being the plan that was forwarded and recommended by the Harrisburg Planning Commission to the council, and the second to be the pertinent documents. And there's a table of contents showing each of the related resolutions of the council and the planning commission, each of the required notices to each of the surrounding municipalities in the school district, the agendas of this council where they've previously discussed comprehensive plan, the web advertisement for the public discussions that happened in June by this council, the publication of the notice for this meeting and the proof of publication that it was there, and at the end, the public comments that were received by the Harrisburg, City of Harrisburg through the clerk's office during the course of council's review. And from our view, that satisfies the conditions of the municipal planning code in terms of the record that is required. Tonight's purpose is to take additional comments and questions from the public on the plan that has been proposed and make a determination whether to move forward, whether to take additional comments after today. That will be, at, I believe, the discretion of the chair of this hearing himself soon.
Mike, have anything like that?
Just a little bit to follow up on Mr. Grover's statements, and to note that this is the NBC mandated step in a process that began in 2014 at the instruction of City Council, and we're we're happy to be here. The Planning Commission definitely took a lot of time to review the document and to get to where we're at now. And City Council has also taken their time to make sure that they're hosting meetings both digitally through Zoom and then out in the public, and provide time for the public to make comments. And so we're now at the point where we're excited to be here, to have the public hearing. And, I would just like to say that a lot of times I think we look at these documents, these plans and provided and produced by the city, and we see them as kind of a point in time. But I really wanted to stress how this plan will be maybe a little bit different from the one what we had previously that dates to 1974, which I think, did not find a lot of use in the subsequent decades, whereas we intend for this one to be a more adaptable one, more flexible one, a living document that we will be providing updates, that we as the city and specifically the Planning Bureau will be providing updates to the Planning Commission and to City Council on as we go through the timeframe of the plan itself. And we hope to have discussions about amendments when necessary to update the document to reflect the conditions that the city and its people will be experiencing in the years ahead. So we definitely want to make sure that this document does not get stale, that it is not a document that loses meaning or intention over time, and that it is rather something that grows with the city and it evolves so that it does have the use that it's intended by the state.
So I've been immersed in this for the last few months pretty substantively. So I'd like to give my colleagues an opportunity to ask any questions they may have. Processes in the town halls, both digitally and in person. I will make my recommendations as chair as to next steps for public comment and amendments, but just wanted to give my colleagues an opportunity to ask any questions they may have in the process thus far. I will start with far right with Councilwoman Daniels.
Questions. I don't know if we go through any changes between the hearings we had over the summer and
we have not changed the document. So the document as adopted by the Planning Commission in September of last year and forwarded and presented to City Council is still the document that is on the table.
Councilman.
Thank you. So the last time we had an opportunity to talk about this, one of the things for me is, I know we sent the document out to surrounding municipalities and other folks that would potentially have an interest. Have we heard anything back from, I guess for me, I wanted to know if the school district has provided any comments to the plan at this point, the last time the last time we talked about this, I don't think they had just at that point.
I know that Swatara Township, I believe, did provide responses, and trying to maybe look through.
Exhibit 22 is the comments.
Okay. We're going to.
Because I know last time I know you provided them with an opportunity to comment.
Right.
I just did not remember if we received comments from the school district.
Councilman Majors, if I may. Tiffany Baldock, Senior Deputy Solicitor. We did not receive any comments from the school district. The only surrounding municipality that we received comments for was from Swatara Township. That is approximately 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages in tab 22. And we received comments from the Dolphin County Planning Commission.
Okay. Thank you. And then do we have some of the comments from listed in here from public work meetings that we have had on the plan for our review? And are all of, and this encompasses, okay, that was the only other question I'm looking through now, and we have all the other comments from that came in prior to that.
They came into City Council.
To the City Council.
After the Resolution 85 was introduced. It's our understanding this is all of the comments that were formally received.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Good right now. Thank you.
Okay.
Councilwoman Green.
The planning commission for a couple of years now. It was originally completed, the draft was completed by a consultant. It was looked over then by the administration, and then the original draft version was looked over again by the planning commission, who went through page by page and comments and tried to make sure everything we wanted to make sure was in place. Another consultant was then hired to condense it together. Merge all the comments and things that the planning commission had seen, and then we put out for public comment, where the public is able to make we hosted a series of work sessions where the public can come and make their public comments as well, and that's kind of how we got to this question. Just I guess one question, as far as some of the public comments that were received during those public sessions, were we able to answer those for the public in a public manner, which I know were requested?
Mr. Petrovsky, could you help maybe repeat the question?
You said that with the public comments that were received, are we able to answer them in the public hearing?
Now?
So public comments and inquiries are two different things. So public comments are on the contents of the plan. It is the discretion of the chair to answer questions if they're able to be answered. And some questions, just from a legal point of view, is that they weren't really about the land use issue, which is the comprehensive plan. They were more about larger social issues, if I understood that correctly. But the chair is free to answer what the chair believes is that they're capable of answering.
Yeah, what I've been doing is I looked through the comments and then reached out directly to constituents that I could to get clarification on some of their questions and provide an answer. But I'm happy to provide, once we formal responses to it, in a public setting, work with our clerks on the most efficient way to do that. There's a fair amount of overlap. Some of the concerns are similar. I don't know if we want to address each one individually and how that would work. But.
Did you hear that, Councilwoman Green?
Yes, I did hear that. Thanks for like so we did get back to individuals for the questions. Trying to clarify things. I think it's important. I think it's just important for the public to know that while we had some sessions, although we couldn't answer everything right then, we did follow up with people. Just on what the public perception
Councilwoman Bauer.
Thank you. I don't have any additional questions. Just trying to digest what we received earlier. Thank you.
So I'll make a couple of comments and my thoughts on the process. Thus far, I want to thank the Planning Bureau, Law Department, Planning Commission on all their works with this document. One thing I'll say that is sorely missed is communications director and a fully funded communications team. When we had to do the town halls, I think Paul Moman, did a very good job with his capabilities. Going back some years when we had Joe Davis present to kind of help get the word out into the community. It was beneficial to have that counterpart in the administrative side to help with that communications. So I really encourage council and the administration or whatever administration may come in the future to invest in a communications department and a communications director so that when we do civic engagement type of activities like this, we don't have to just rely on our clerks and then that are already putting a lot of hours in the Planning Bureau as well. I think over and over what we heard at the town halls was, I heard this through word of mouth. I happened across this and just was curious about it at the Italian Lake meeting. That's obviously not how we want to effectively communicate with the community. So I think that was one of the bigger things that I took away from it, that we could do a much better job as a collective government, is to engage, because when folks feel like we're not making a good faith effort to engage them and educate them on the process, that we're hiding something, trying to sneak something by them. And that's clearly not the case in this. We want public comment. We want the public's feedback on this document. The administration was here so that I could relay that message, but just wanted to make that note in public hearing. In terms of next steps, I would like to allow the public to comment for another 2 weeks. And I'd like to council to digest all of this information the next 2 weeks. And if council members could present amendments in 3 weeks' time, so I think that's October 12th.
Is it comments for October 12th, Mr. Chairman, or is it amendments for October 12th?
And then comments, whatever would be the week prior to that.
We probably ought to announce a specific cutoff date just for process purposes.
Yeah, bear with me.
So Dave, if you don't mind, so today's the 21st, 2 weeks from then would be October 5th.
Yeah.
That's when you would want any amendments.
Right.
No,
that's
the comments.
Any
Okay.
additional public comment on this process, on this plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we do have a website link.
Yes.
That is on the city website. There's a button that you can say public comment on comprehensive plan and go to that button and you'll get the form and the opportunity to comment there.
Right.
And that will be forwarded to the city clerk.
Or they can go in person, or they can reach out to a council member, however they would like to do it.
Then October 12th would be that following.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's where council members could have any amendments to the document submitted so that we could work on implementing
Right.
Just to clarify, October 12th would be the vote.
No, it would just need a cutoff for council members.
So that night, if it's on the agenda as for amendments, although it's not an ordinance, you could consider amendments that night for the plan if you wish to.
I think I'd like to wait and see the scope of the amendments.
Sure.
But I think that'll really drive the process moving forward and what we would need to do. If they're minor, then this can move along pretty quick. If they're more substantive, then we'll have to figure out the most effective way to.
According to the municipal planning code, you have the right to amend the plan. You have the right to accept it in whole or part. If you substantially amend what you're considering now, a second public hearing will be required to consider that change in the amendment and its effect on the plan. So depending what they are, there's a lot of things that are minor that could go into an amendment or a correction or a clarification, as opposed to a larger policy type of question amendment that would go in. But it's going to be a judgment call whether it needs a second hearing. It just depends on the substance of the amendment.
Yeah, right. We won't know what that looks like until council members. if council members could have those to me sooner rather than later, that would be helpful. But yes, the cutoff time would be 3.
Before you have to take formal comment in the hearing setting. It's a little different than Sunshine Act. That's what the purpose of the MPC is, to request if there's any additional comments to be added to the record. We have our court reporter here too. Before we go there, I'd like to, just as a housekeeping matter, move to admit binders 1 and 2, which are the exhibits to this hearing, so they are part of the formal transcript and record, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
I guess, was there any other questions or comments from council members? If, for example, you have an amendment you'd like clarification on, feel free to ask.
So, no amendment that I have clarification on, but I guess one of the biggest concerns, and it was mentioned at the onset, was, you know, ensuring that this doesn't become similar to what happened in 1974, right, where we had one, you know, comprehensive plan set on a shelf, and you know, we're finally, you know, what, I guess 40 years later, we started the process. We're, you know, 7 years into, you know, the process of getting a plan adopted. I guess one of the things that we want to consider is putting steps in the plan to make sure that we're reviewing it and revisiting it, rather than just it being, hey, we did a plan. I know we talk about, hey, what we're going to do, you know, breakout groups. I think formalizing what that revisiting process looks like could be something that would be beneficial from one person's perspective. I think the more tangible, yeah, even just look backs that we put into this plan to say, hey, we're not going to let it sit. We're going to review it on a regular basis. It's one thing that I think for me would give more confidence that this isn't going to turn into that. I appreciate all the work that everyone's done, but the biggest fear is that we end up in a similar situation from my perspective. So I will formalize those in written form and submit them.
To add off that, I know one thing I was talking with some of the staff is potentially when we look at, as Mr. Knight talks about this being a living document, there being amendments, is as a practice to do that before we enter into the budget, maybe around this time of year, where we kind of revise the plan, you know, fresh plan, go into negotiations with the administration to reference the plan and have those conversations. So that's something that I think, I don't know if that would require an amendment, but I think that is something as an established practice council should advocate for.
If council wants to establish it, you know, in terms of actually, it's a mandate, that's an ordinance, which is certainly within your purview to do, to have a reporting period by whatever administration is here, whatever planning bureau is here. That is one of your options to do. I would also encourage the council to hear from DCED, which oversees comprehensive plans in some way and provides sort of some of the current best practice discussions. They had come to the planning commission as well. I think the personnel there changes. I'm not sure how often, but they engage in comprehensive plan analysis, both on the local and county level routinely. And those kind of public education processes of, and I'm going to use the wrong word, but Jeff Knight would know the right word. They do sort of mini plans, like they do, you know, they focus on an issue, and you will see those published in other cities. So there are resources out there that the people of Harrisburg, I think, would benefit from, just from our experience with going through this process. And Mr. Knight can probably speak to those at length about other opportunities to the process of updating in pieces and focusing portions of the plan. And some of that will have budgetary implications as you go forward.
I would be very interested in exploring that ordinance. Maybe that's it.
Happy to sit down with you and go through that.
Great. Anything else from any of my colleagues before we open it up for public comment? Ms. Green? I'll take that as a okay, start with the comments. We'll start on the right. Any comments? Okay, middle. Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay. Go ahead. Could you get closer to the mic, please?
Sure. Hey, kind of tall here. Your fellow South 13th Street, Harrisburg resident, ACBCWG co-host. Yeah, so first of all, hello there, Mr. Knight. Last we spoke on the public hearing, you did mention that you would provide the itemized list for all the items that were taken out of due to the revisions, the minor revisions. We are yet to get that document, so maybe you could provide an update when we could expect that, unless
it's not going to be released.
So please clarify that. You said it's not going to be.
It is not going to be released. Draft documents are not public documents as a matter of law, and so we do not release the pre-decisional pieces that are out there. So if that's what you're asking for, which is what our office, when the question came, understood it, and we get that question for a number of things.
Okay.
We don't release drafts because public officials, whether they're a mayor, the council members, Mr. Knight or others, have to have the freedom to think about something, write it down, and then change their mind in their thinking and not provide two different answers in the same document. So that's why you have a draft. And then that's when they become final. That's when it becomes public.
Okay, no, and that's fine. But like we had asked that previously, we got a different answer, which is why we were waiting. So if there was a legality issue, that should have been previously stated. That it was a simple follow-up. So that's why I'm asking, because folks had asked, hey, will we get an update in terms of if there are all these specific items that were removed and we were told that they were moved to other documents, then we were hoping for some sort of continuity or clarity in that process. So if you're telling me that there's a legality constraint on that, then that needs to be clarified in the process. That's my question. And so also you keep referencing the municipal code that pretty much allows council to be negligent of the public comments or public inquiries. And if you're saying that there's a different process that people are supposed to be using to actually provide inquiries other than simple comments, then perhaps that needs to be also clarified. And be very plain for people if what they're really trying to submit is comments versus inquiries that require responses.
And I could go very long into the public comment because it doesn't have to do with the city of Harrisburg. It has to do with government at local, state, and federal level.
Go ahead, provide the code, that's fine, but I'm just saying like that needs to be clarified.
I understand, ma'am.
Yes. And then in terms of how the code says, obviously the overarching plan is supposed to be, I guess, the overarching plan for the consecutive municipal comp plans. If you can also reference those or just kind of give a high level of like the municipal codes that you expect to be influenced or be offshoots out of this, that'll be very helpful for folks to know as well. Also, you guys talked about potential policy changes. Please do keep us posted on those. And in terms of any revisions, I believe you mentioned that they're possibly, depending on how detailed of a response, there might be some amendments or another further hearing. I'd also like to maybe for the folks to be clarified on what are the official notice proceedings required for any future public hearings, because for this one, it was people who were aware of the last meeting. Those are the only people who knew that this was happening today. So as folks, knew they were sharing by word of mouth, posting it on the social medias. And I just, again, as Mr. Matt said, Councilman Matt said, has put it out there, it is important to really do a better job of effective public engagement, because it's not good enough to just simply say it at one of these meetings or put it on the website when you know that if you're in a city of 50,000, let's say 30,000 of those are adults who can participate, and we're seeing the kind of numbers that we're seeing in terms of participation from your constituents. There's something to be said about that. So I would just like to reiterate, there is a great opportunity for improvement in terms of how we truly engage, not just outreach, but really engage in a two-way manner with the constituents. I think there's opportunity for that. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. Vern McKissick, 317 North Front Street, 20-year city resident, business owner, and 25 years I was doing math on the planning commission. Vice chair to remember those. Just wanted to speak to the comprehensive plan. I'm not here in any official role for the planning commission, although I imagine I'm not going to be too far off the mark. I guess the first thing to understand, what is this document and what is it intended to be? It's not a zoning code. It's not a set of restrictions under which you have to live. It is a guiding document so that future zoning codes, future decisions by council has been alluded to already, can be gauged against. I think the most important thing, and Councilman Marston did point this out, is it needs to be revisited. The last comprehensive plan was early 1970s, and I think we'll all agree a lot's happened in 50 years in Harrisburg. Heck, a lot happens in 5 years in Harrisburg, or 2, as the last 2 years we've gone through. So this does need to be a living document. But I think the important thing that I would like to just come forward with is at some point we have to pound the stake in the ground and then go forward with edits, with reviews, and have a regular process so that this can be addressed every 5 years. This really is the 2015 comprehensive plan that had been updated with some additional information to become the 2020 plan, which will probably be adopted in 2021 or 22. We really should, in 2025, be looking at a new adapted plan. And I think there have been a lot of comments that have come up, some of which the plan can buttress, other things that may be just beyond the tail of a comprehensive land use plan, but it's a starting point. It's not an end point, and I think that's the thing we should be looking at as a group. So again, thank you, and I do hope the process can move forward and we can start moving forward with it. Thank you.
Anybody else in the middle? To the left? That'll conclude the public comment. And yeah, that'll conclude the business for the Community and Economic Development Committee.
And you to recess the hearing formally.
Oh, I don't. Recess the hearing.
Thank you. now the court reporter can stop typing. So.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Madsen. So we will go to public comment prior to adjournment. So for the work session, for this public hearing, are there any additional public comments? All right. Middle, left. Seeing none, this public hearing is now adjourned. All right, and now we are going to move on to the work session of Tuesday, September 21st, 2021. I'd like to call that meeting to order at 6:14 p.m. Kurt, would you mind calling the roll?
Sure, Mr. Allett, Ms. Bowers.
Present.
Ms. Daniels.
Here.
Ms. Green. Mr. Madsen. Here. Mr. Majors.
Here.
Ms. Williams.
And again, I'd just like to note that I am chairing the meeting on behalf of President Williams, who is out to a prior engagement, and Mr. Allett is excused. So now we'll move on to committee business. First committee is the Administration Committee, and we are here to hear a presentation to City Council on Thomas Chester Way.
Yeah, I think Mr. Sloan was the.
Mr. Sloan.
I see a bunch of other people that could be associated with the group, but he's not here yet. I don't know if anyone wants to wait for Mr. Sloan to move forward to the next item on the agenda, or if there is anybody here to speak.
If not, then we'll pause that, put a pause on that until we see Mr. Sloan arrives. Next committee is the Public Safety Committee. And Chair Green, are you with us?
Thank you, Councilman Majors. The first item for Public Safety Committee will be Bill 14. Would you mind reading that to the record, Mr. Trustee?
Yes, Bill 14 is an ordinance amending Chapter 3-133 parking meters of Title III Public Safety to modernize the process for a parking meter zone notification, signage, and methods of payment for parking in a parking meter zone.
Doing a brief overview for us?
That is going to be me, Councilwoman Green, Neil Grover from the Law Bureau. Rich Kotz is on vacation, who is our parking administrator. This ordinance is a follow-up to one that the council passed in the spring related to changing meters from one street and taking them off another. In the course of that process, it became clear that the modernization of parking meters literally moves away from meters. They are now posting signs which will have a variety of ways for an individual to be notified that what they can plug into their phone essentially in order to pay for the parking meter. Right now, there is no such language in our ordinance that allows for what contactless payment other than the signs that were for the free codes. This is going to, instead of touching a meter, putting in information, there's going to be signage that simply says plug in whatever the code is into your phone and your car information, and that will put you on the parking meter to pay your services. It's moving towards apps or QR codes, things like that. And it's going to be signage instead of meters, which is a cheaper way also to do it. Costs less money to put those out there than actual meters. This is a request that came from SP Plus and their folks in order to be able to issue timely parking tickets and monitor parking around the city where they have services, but it would apply across the board as an option. It doesn't say there can't be parking meters. It says that they can, where appropriate, put in contactless parking signs to let people use apps and other codes that they put up in order to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Grover. At this moment, I don't have any questions. I will start with my fellow council members. I will get to my left if I was in the dais with Councilman Bowers.
Thank you, Councilwoman Green. I just have one question, and maybe this is too in the weeds, but relative to the apps and the QR codes that you mentioned that they would use, is it one single app that a user would have to download or different apps?
So this is purely from discussions that I've had. So I am not in the parking business. It is, I think the option is to give people as many options as they can. The equivalent being as you do for food delivery, there's different services, and that they're going to provide as many as they can in the process. I have not seen what the sign will look like when they start doing it, but I think what they were looking for was flexibility as the technology changes so fast, put up a notification and signage so people have access to as many ways as possible to pay for the meter.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Councilman Madison.
No questions for me, thank you.
Councilman Major.
Thank you. So I think one of the concerns that I have, I mean, I get we're moving forward in technology, and I don't know if you can speak to this, and we don't have anyone here from SB Plus, but one of the concerns I have is, accessibility issues for folks that may not have. I mean, I know where a lot of folks have smartphones, but people that still have very simple phones. How are they impacted by this if SP Plus starts moving completely away from meters? I know this just gives them an option, but in certain areas where there's maybe one meter, how is this going to work with accessibility in terms of ensuring people can pay and not be limited and have to get a ticket because they may not have a phone that has that capability?
Councilman Major's very fair question to which I do not have an answer. That would be SP Plus would have to speak to what their thinking is on those that do not have a cell phone or a phone that can do what they are requesting, and more importantly, not even just someone who doesn't bring their phone.
Right.
But I'm sure that this is not new information to them. They're in the business of doing this, and they have indicated they're following where the industry is going. But I think that question is best answered by SP Plus.
Okay, and then I guess another question is probably better asked by SP Plus. I guess traveled to another city that had SP Plus as their parking meter company. And one of the things that I noticed that was a bit different about here outside of the price of parking for an hour was that for handicap parking spaces, they had meters directly right there. Are they contemplating, something similar to that, or is this still just solely focused on, this is simply focused on them having new ways of notifying and other?
This ordinance is limited to the contactless option, adding it to the existing meter language. It's in our ordinance. It does not speak to changing the way that handicap parking spaces are handled. Okay. There is a second ordinance that was introduced related to disability parking, but that is really just a technical amendment to satisfy the issue that our existing version lacked the language that mirrors the ADA in part and doesn't recognize what PennDOT actually does, which came out from discussions with the Disability Rights Project. And so that does not go into other amendments, but certainly it's in front of you. If there were other amendments to be made, that would be council to propose, and we could craft from there. But what's doable, I think, is an SP Plus question.
Okay. And then just my last question in terms of the signage, language access. Are they looking to have them available in other languages, or a QR code that can, translate, put the QR code and then it gets sent to a website that'll provide you Spanish, English?
I do not know the question today. Okay. That's also an SP Plus question. Right. They're the ones doing the signage.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Would you like the administration to make a request that SP Plus come back or to answer questions in writing?
I'll talk with the chair. I'll leave it in her purview, but if we can get an answer from SP Plus, that'd be appreciated. No further questions, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Majors. Councilwoman Daniels.
So the language of the bill refers to all parking, not just to SP parking. Is there some plan that non-SP parking will be transitioned?
So I am unaware of any plan for the city's portions that are policed by our parking enforcement to do the same signage at this time. What this does is create the option in the ordinance. When you give someone anything that is a ticket, you have to have it articulated that you have the right to do so. And to limit parking, you have to have articulated in the ordinance. So all this does is create the option. It doesn't require a change by the city. I cannot speak one way or the other whether that will not come down the road. Mr. Kotz could probably speak better than that to anybody else.
And that's it for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. If anyone else has any questions, please feel free to get down. If not, then we will move on to the next resolution in my committee. The next resolution is resolution 66. Oh, sorry, Mr. Petrosky, if you could put this on the contingent on us getting information back from SD that was requested by, I believe, Councilman Majors. The next resolution is resolution 66. Would you mind reading that into record, Mr. Petrosky?
Sure. Resolution 66 of 2021 is a resolution authorizing the city of Harrisburg to negotiate and enter into a professional services agreement with Kittleson and Associates to provide on-call services supporting Vision Zero rapid response projects, including traffic and safety analysis, planning, and design services.
Thank you. Is there someone here from the administration to give an overview of this resolution?
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chair. This is Wayne Martin, City Engineer. I'm joined by a representative from Kittleson, Mr. Andy Durr.
Thank you. Would you mind providing us with an overview of this resolution?
Certainly. So as everyone's aware, the city of Harrisburg made a Vision Zero commitment to eliminate fatalities and serious injuries due to crashes by year 2030. There's a number of projects ongoing that are, focused on that goal. We have our Vision Zero website. We have our high injury network where we focus our resources on very statistical approach to eliminating crashes. So the intersections or the corridors that are most prone to crashes are the ones we focus on. We put higher weights on more vulnerable users like pedestrians, bicyclists, motorcyclists, because those are the ones, cars are getting safer every day, but bones remain just as fragile as they, ever were. So I guess it's probably a little bit easier to explain what this contract is not. And that is, it's not a design contract for large projects. There's a couple projects in mind with this approach. One's budgeted, one we're seeking a reallocation for in the next reallocation. But this is not associated with any large scale projects. This is the quick hitters. This is the ones where we would expect to implement in a short period of time. The best example would probably be like the 6th Street road diet. So Kittleson was selected. They have an office here in Harrisburg. They have a contract with with HATS, Harrisburg Area Transportation Study, through Tri-County Regional Planning to do safety. They also have a contract with PennDOT to do redraft the traffic calming manual, PennDOT statewide traffic calming manual. So, with that skill set here in Harrisburg, we reached out to them, to decide whether or not they were interested in a task like this. They have a lot of experience in these sorts of tasks with other cities, as Mr. Dirk can share with you. But this is the this is the consultant we used on the I-83 project, which through all sorts of negotiations and ended up netting the city $500,000 for the State Street project, political influences and that went along with that study. So this would be signing and pavement marking plans. This would be grant support, right? Crafting a study showing what makes sense, feasibility type studies. The 2 Division Street was budgeted for this year. There was $35,000 for new signing and pavement markings on Division Street. That would be to coincide with all the development going on North 7th Street, the shift of traffic due to the 2nd Street two-way, and the ongoing issues with truck parking and everything else up there on Division. So that's budgeted for this year. That would be task number 1 under this contract. And task number 2, if council were to reallocate the money, would be Her Street, particularly the intersection of Her and 15th, where we unfortunately had a fatality on this year. Everyone's aware. So those are the kinds of projects, and that would be that intersection study would include intersection control evaluations, whether or not a signal is warranted there. There was a suggestion from a community member, or actually it was Council President Williams, to be fair, about converting 15th north of Her to one-way traffic flow. All those things we've incorporated to be studied, determine what's the best solution for what makes the most sense. What can we do now versus what do we have to get funding for? So in essence, that's what this project does. It's a 5-year contract with an upset limit. And this would be not in a capital budget, but this would be an annual allocation to Vision Zero professional services every year to do these types of projects. Signal upgrades is another one I didn't mention. So that's the kind of projects we're looking for. Before I take too much of everyone's time here, I'd want to give Mr. Durr the floor to talk about his past experience in these types of projects with the city and also with other municipalities.
Good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. My experience in the city specifically goes back to 2015 when we were on the team that was looking at the 6th, 7th, and Division Street study. We were involved in the 3rd Street project, the 6th Street road diet, 2nd Street multimodal project that's in construction now, 7th Street, Mulder Square. So significant experience in the city in the last 5 years. In a larger region, Kittleson's doing these type of Vision Zero projects for the city of Boston, the city of Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. We're doing bike share, micro mobility type stuff for the city of New York. So lots of experience with safety, multimodal, bike ped, transit type projects for cities up and down the East Coast.
Okay, I guess that concludes our presentation. We can answer questions at this time.
I guess I have a couple of questions. It sounds like these are smaller strip style projects that they'll be working on. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So our larger transportation projects have typically multiple sources of funds. So any kind of federally funded transportation project, there's a separate solicitation for a project-specific consultant that has to be completed. Same thing with PennDOT state funds. There's a separate solicitation that gets done. So this is sort of city-funded projects, one, but also, grant support services. Maybe there are federally funded projects, or maybe there's a large project that could be done where we would need, cost estimating, some planning level stuff to present, to those bodies to make a decision to, the Tiger grant would have been a good example of how we applied for Tiger grant. So so there would be some early items done before we get to the large projects funding that could be incorporated into this project. But for the most part, we're looking, it's Vision Zero, and we're looking at these kind of quick hitters. And that's what, that's what we saw in this budget for 2021. That's what we're seeking in 2022's budget. And so that's kind of what we envisioned, in this project, but it wouldn't be design services for large scale transportation projects.
All right. So is this something that, a service that we had someone for in the past, and it's not how we were interpreting it?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
Please, Chair.
Sure. I was asking, is this something that we've had a company on here in the past? And it's not how we're having a company, like having someone signed on for 5 years, how will that have to help in the future?
Is it something that we had
A previously current contract?
Yeah.
No. So in the so when we did the second street multimodal, we did a comprehensive network evaluation of a majority of the city in and out because of the magnitude of converting 2nd Street to two-way. So within that contract, we did have Wallace Montgomery under a contract to do a lot of what, they prepared the Vision Zero program, right? So the action plan, the website, which has paid dividends, in our community outreach, which I agree with everyone that mentioned previously about how we can do better. We can always do better engaging the community, but that aside, that's what we had. That's complete, right? 2nd Street's under construction. We no longer have those consultants on open-end contract. And so this would be to take Vision Zero to, at least for the next 5 years, forward. So that this is a new contract. We do have some open-end contracts at this time with engineering inspection services. We have one with Urban and one with TNC engineers, but those are limited to inspection, construction management, and construction inspection tasks.
Okay, and then just the last question for me before I open up to my colleagues. When we do these quick-hitter or short-term projects, especially ones that might need more long-term solutions, what is our follow-up? I know we did something on 1st Street after we were ended up there, but what's the follow-up afterwards?
What is the follow-up?
Yeah, great question. So, for example, Division Street, the task order that was envisioned for this year for Division Street would be a signing and pavement marking plan. So the follow-up would be a set of plans that we can then, the city could install the signs and we would bid through CapCog the line painting. So that's Division Street, very, very straightforward, very simple. They prepare, 10 sheets of drawings, do all this, all the measurements, all the turning radius calculations, everything that's necessary there. And then those drawings we turn around and either send out for contract or do the work in-house. For Hearst Street, the follow-up, because that's a state route, the Hearst Street one would be, we would have to coordinate with PennDOT since it's a state route, but it kind of depends on the recommendations of the report. If the report has some short-term recommendations that can be implemented, quickly with city forces, we can certainly take a look at those. If it's, one-way conversions of streets, like was one of the recommendations, that would come down to council, similar to the bill that came down earlier with vacating, only it would just, change it to two-way to one-way. And we could also turn it over to HATS and write problem statements under HATS and seek federal funding. We could see multimodal funds through PennDOT, DCD, any kind of grant opportunities that could fund the project. Or we could just simply seek to fund it. The city could elect to fund it through, city funds, general funds, or liquid fuel funds, if it's, assuming it's eligible for liquid fuel funding, which most roadway projects are. So that's sort of that's how we follow up. We don't want to do studies that sit on shelves. That's not what Vision Zero is about. It's to implement recommendations of these reports. And we're not going to study corridors that aren't statistical issues, right? We're going to look at that high injury network first and foremost.
All right, thank you. I will open it up to my colleagues. I will start all the way to my far right, if I was on the dance, with Councilwoman Gann.
So this is a 5-year contract for $1 million. And then within it are multiple incidents, and each incident is capped. I don't see what's the capped amount for each incident.
Okay, so the $1.5 million upset limit is what we have on other contracts, other engineering contracts. So that was just sort of fit in there. I can't envision going over that amount in a 5-year period. Each project will have to be budgeted because we don't have in our budget line item for engineering professional services this year is $35,000. And that was budgeted based on what it would cost for Division Streets. That's all we actually have a line item for this year. We also sought another $35,000 to do this 15th Street study, so that you'll see that in the next budget reallocation request. But it will be whatever, it'll be an annual budget, and it won't be in a capital. So you won't be, we're not trying to sneak anything by. It'll be very transparent. It'll be like, what is in engineering 0106, 0160 budget unit for professional services, and that'll be the number. And I think for next year, we put 35 to 50,000, and that could, that's a 1 or 2 projects a year on a rolling basis, is what we were envisioning.
So in the contract, it just references that, and I'm maybe using the wrong verbiage, and actually each time their services are used, they can't go past a certain maximum. Or I don't see what.
Oh, that would be based on the task order. So this is just an open-end contract that allows us to issue task orders under the contract. So there'll be a separate document entered into that has associated purchase order with it. And so we would negotiate a task order. We would explain the need, get their pricing, break it down by hours and man hours and the different roles and the different sub consultants, and then issue a task order and an associated purchase order based upon the scope of work in the task order.
And I'm needing to translate this for me. Exactly what are we hiring them to do? What will they be doing?
Great. So let's just use the two projects that we have basically scoped out right now that would fall within this contract. One is the Division Street corridor from 7th to Front. So they would analyze the corridor and the traffic flows along the corridor and develop signing and pavement marking plans. And there would be some community outreach included in that proposal. There's some community outreach included in that proposal to reach out to community members. What are the issues on the corridor? You know, if I was at the community meeting, I'm going to comment on this anyway because I'm a city engineer and I noticed it. Like 3rd and Division is a very tough intersection to negotiate. 7th and Division is a very difficult intersection to negotiate. The corridor is very wide. We have, you know, large tractor trailers find it very convenient to park there. So there's some issues with that corridor that have been identified in, you know, previous public meetings and stuff. So it's looking at that corridor and developing those signing and pavement marking plans. So it could go from a 2-lane road to a 3-lane road with a center turn lane that would make it easier to make turns and things like that. And when the Hudson facility, the old D&H building, when that goes online and there's 800 additional, you know, vehicles coming out of that building, that corridor will need attention. So that's one project. The 15th Street project will look at the intersection of 15th Street and Her Street and try and study the crashes, right? One of the tasks would be to look at the crash history and both reported and unreported crashes. What are the types of crashes that are occurring? Are they angle crashes, head-on collisions, you know, side swipes? What pedestrians? What are they? How, you know, what direction are the vehicles moving? Are there sight distance issues to look at? Are they happening at night? Is the lighting adequate? Are they happening, you know, during the day? What are the parking restrictions that need to be in place? And then, so they would study the crash, sight distance. They would analyze the traffic, the speeds. There's for signals. I think there's a petition floating around somewhere in City Hall with 200 people requesting a traffic signal at that intersection. That's great, but what we need to do is do the warrant analysis. So within the PennDOT or Federal Highway Administration and PennDOT manuals, there are warrants that have to be met. Those are based on volumes of pedestrians. There's a crash warrant. There's volumes of vehicles on, you know, both main line and side streets. So that's part of the analysis that'll have to be completed to determine whether a signal is warranted. And if a signal, and what else is, what are other treatments that can be implemented? So bump outs, curb extensions, different intersection control, like a mini roundabout, maybe, you know, with the hill there, that's maybe not a good example, but certainly something to consider. There's other ways to handle four-way stop is a good one. Could that be a four-way stop intersection? So how to control the intersection. So then that report will make recommendations. It'll do that warrant analysis and let us know what can be done and what's the recommendation.
So if we didn't use their services, the task they'll be doing would be, you would be doing them if we didn't hire them to do it, if you had the task.
Right, yeah, we'll see. Somebody has to do that task, yeah. I mean, so my office has done some internal traffic studies on, like we did one on Berry Hill, but we're pretty limited in what we can handle in-house. You know, we have old like tube counters that sometimes people park on, they get ripped up by snow, you know, street sweepers. So we spend a lot of time just, you know, grinding our wheels with no results. So these are the experts. They know what other cities are doing. They're on the cutting edge of what's being accepted because they're in the process of writing new manuals. So the worst thing that we could do is implement something that by the time it takes effect, it's already outdated because the new standards have come out and stuff like that. So yeah, yes, it has to, it has to be done by my office, whether it's me or a consultant. Yes, that's correct.
And the reason I was asking that question is because the last time we spent a lot of time, I thought, hiring more ASME employees would have been better. This almost sounds like we could have another person in your office supporting your work. I understand there are a number of issues, but it's just a concern I have that maybe we're contracting out too much. But we discussed last week.
Yeah.
The labor discussions that are had, but I'm starting to get a little worried about what this means in terms of the city as an employer and stuff. But that's not great. Anyways, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Councilman Majors.
Yes, thank you. So just so I'm clear, so there's no funding source for the 1.5. This is just the open-ended. We would get contracts that would have to. This just gives you the authority to spend up to that amount of money. So for all of those different orders that your office may need to come up with, or these different things that can pop up, whether it be any additional oversight from the council, or all those orders just be things that the office is able to execute without providing council with any additional information.
So the council's total control would be on that one line item in the budget. That's budget 106 or 160 professional services on an annual basis. There's no other source of fund. It's just that fund. So the only amount currently budgeted is 35,000. Counts. That's for task order 1. So if council approves this, we will issue task order 1 for the Division Street corridor. If council decides to reallocate monies for 15th Street, then we would issue task order 2 for 15th Street. When I present 2022 budget, you'll ask me what is that line item for, and I will tell you at that time what corridors or intersections or what role, and you will know that it's coming from, at least for the next 5 years, would come from be performed by this consultant.
Okay. All right. So that's the line that we need to look forward to. That would, in all intents, serve as our opportunity to have those conversations about what corridors. Okay.
Yes.
I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Madison, any questions?
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Bowers, any questions?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to revisit the community outreach that you mentioned, because I didn't see it in the agreement or the cover letter that was written to you. It just notes the quick proposals. So I wanted to know 2 things: if those quick proposals would be made public, and what community outreach can we expect since it's not outlined. I know in some of the previous Vision Zero projects, there were at least 2 or 3 public meetings that were outlined within the proposals. So I just wanted to be clear on what the community can expect.
No, that's a great question. I'm going to let Kittle Sim respond, but before they do, we've had a lot of success with the pop-up events. And so almost every project we do, we intend to pop up on the corridor a couple times just to engage with the users of the corridor, whether it's residents, whether it's commuters, hopefully both. And so that would be various times. We've done that. We did that on 6th Street on a Saturday when the market was open right there at 6th and Burbeck. That was very, very fruitful. We did that on State Street quite a few times, both during commuter hours and during the work week. We have our Vision Zero website, which we tend to keep updating on these projects. So there's a sort of a storage house of places to look at various projects. And then we do have a Twitter now, our department, so we tweet out news on different projects, both in construction and in design. But Kittleson has an interesting approach on community outreach for the next two projects that I'd like them to share with you.
First, I'll just let you know that our several core team members were involved with the community outreach on State Street, which I think the pop-up events and then the surveys, all of that went very well, and we got a lot of great feedback for that. And folks were also involved in 2nd Street and those workshops, charrettes that were extremely well attended, a lot of great feedback, and a great project came out of that. So the same folks will be involved and bring that experience forward. Also, we've engaged Tri-County Community Action, who's familiar with the neighborhoods in the area. And we have draft work orders that were written up with the scope, but we're in the process of amending those to write Tri-County into that. So it doesn't increase the upset limit, but it just shifts funds to them. And so they'll be helping to organize a community outreach for 15th and Her, and also Division Street.
And I think it's important because Tri-County is trying so hard to make our streets safer, and they have so many resources, and they hear just as many complaints, if not more, than we do. And they've been doing really great things up on Dairy Street with Capital Region Water and the city, assisting with the sponsoring of those projects. And so bringing them onto a team like this, I think will pay dividends.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. If there are any other questions from my colleagues, I don't have any other questions at this time. I would actually move this onto the agenda for our next legislative session, and that will end the public safety item for today.
Thank you, Ms. Bria. So we're going to move back to the administration committee, and we will receive a presentation to City Council on Thomas Chester Way. It looks like our guest, Mr. Overstone, is here.
Moving a little unsteady this evening. First of all, we'd like to thank you very much for honoring us to present this evening, and apologize. We were sitting outside since 5:45. In fact, we were still in committee. So sorry about that. As you well know, in this room in 2010, an ad hoc committee of 40 individuals and 200 organizations came together to form a task force to celebrate Harrisburg in Pennsylvania and the 150th anniversary of the Civil War. At that time, we were able to raise the dollars through DCED to put articulate downtown development district signage for the Civil War. That coalition came back together in 2015 to mount the Grand Review of the United States Colored Troops here in Harrisburg, a distinct event that Harrisburg hosted the nation at the end of the Civil War. The following year, we laid the Bethel AME Trail from the train station to its current home along Commonwealth Avenue. The year following, we were designated as the only Pennsylvania site in the International Institute for Peace through Tourism's network of peace parks. And with your assistance, we designated the 4-mile-long Riverfront Park as a peace park. Then we began our work on the Commonwealth Monument Project, which, as you well know, we were able to accomplish in 2020, despite the pandemic and several setbacks, and it is now an incredible cultural and heritage landmark. In May of this year, we were asked to join the Dolphin County Library system, and we have Ms. Susan Anthony with us here this evening as they begin their expansion on the Dolphin County Library, and they designated the Thomas Morris Chester Research Center, a national research center on Chester and the abolitionist movement, which will be housed at the library in their new facility. But they went 2 steps further. They have invited our organization to have its official home at the library, and they have built a performance and presentation space for our living history company, the Pennsylvania Past Players, that will finally found an official home. We've come to ask you tonight, I forgot one really important thing. On June 21st of this year, we were designated as a Toni Morrison National Heritage Site, one of only 30 National Heritage Sites, along with Haiti and with Tulsa, Oklahoma in this recent class. We've asked you tonight to help us concretize our efforts of creating a cultural and heritage destination pathway by providing Walnut Street from Commonwealth Avenue to Front Street with a secondary signature designation as Thomas Chester Way. This would connect the Bethel Trail to the Riverfront Park project and the monument to the new Chester Center. And we've been in conversations with Wayne Martin and his office about the best way to achieve this. We've used the model of Mary Sack Way and another dozen surnamed streets across the city as the precedent for this. And I have with me our executive committee, if you'll stand for me. And our partner, Ms. Susan Anthony, if you'll stand. We're here in concert that we might make that designation possible in the coming year. Wayne, would you like to?
Yes, I would. I think it was very well put. It would be a surname. So we've done a number of these over the past few years. Dennis Greenway, Jacqueline, council member. Black, yes, councilman. Mary Sachs, I think Labor Council. But we're working on a policy, some of the newer signs. So our standard signage is white letter on blue for the street name signs. If we reverse that, so the white background with the blue lettering, it's not quite as stand out, but it serves well and avoids that confusion. If we were to rename the street, obviously people would have to change their addresses, things like that. Businesses would have to change addresses. We'd have to go through 911 system and all that, but we've had no issues so far with sort of that surname. And this project's coming to us at the perfect time because we have the bid package ready to go for the Walnut Street. So we'll be resurfacing, reconfiguring Walnut Street from Fifth to Front. That'll go out for bid this year for construction next year. So that includes signalization improvements, signage improvements, you name it. So I think it'd be a perfect opportunity, if ever there was one, to tie all these projects together.
And as I said, I'll end by where I began. Your effort and your approval of this would concretize our designation as a national heritage site by creating the ribbon corridor that connected city and county to the Commonwealth campus and connected the Bethel Trail to the Front Street walking trail and the monument to the new Thomas Morris Chester Research Center at the library.
Thank you, Mr. Sloan. Thank you, Mr. Martin. Are there any questions and or comments from any members of council? I'll start to my left with Councilwoman Bowers.
Thank you for your presence tonight. Thank you for your presentation. I'm in full support of however the council needs to proceed with this. I am a proud descendant of my great-great-grandfather is erected amongst the 100 voices on the Orators pedestal within the Commonwealth Monument Project. My grandmother is honored within the Bethel Trail, so this
and thank you, Mr. Strong, for the presentation. I appreciate all the work that you have done and the work that you continue to do in Harrisburg, and especially ensuring that the history of so many forgotten people isn't forgotten, and it is monumentalized here in the city where they live. So thank you. You have my full support, and we can work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. Councilman Madison.
No questions for me. I'm in full support of the project and a big fan of your previous work as well. One thing while I have you here that I'd be curious to kind of engage your group in is I was down by the riverfront some months ago, and I was looking at the John Harris grave, and on there is a placard that goes over the history and why he wanted to be buried there. I guess he was saved because some natives were angry with him. And a slave by the name of Hercules went and got some other native tribes and joined and saved him. And I'd feel remiss if we don't have some sort of monument for Hercules, because he saved the founder and for that group of natives that supported him. So I don't know if that's something that you're interested in. Take your next project.
That is our next project. So,
Is it?
you know, and my colleagues know that when I'm given an assignment, I usually rise to the movement. You know?
Okay. Yeah. I think that's important to recognize, not just Mr. Harris, but all those that supported him. So,
thank you, sir.
Yeah. So, good for me.
Thank you, Mr. Madsen. Councilman Daniels.
Just a question about what's the next step and what are the timelines?
Wayne?
So I think in the past, this was done through a resolution. So I think the presentation was helpful. So when the resolution comes before council, you kind of already know what it's about. I think the workshop could be condensed. As far as if the work's going to be incorporated of the signage and whatnot into the our project, there's two ways we could do it. One, I could put in the work now and just kind of take it out if we don't use it, or we can just, I mean, it's signage. We have a state certified sign shop. We can print our own signs and put them up with city forces. I know you like to hear that. So it's not a rush on us. It would be more so on the applicant of when they would want to do the dedication.
We're hoping two parts, madam. The first part would be your passage of a resolution, which would help our partners, Dolphin County Library System, who are doing your official groundbreaking for the Thomas Morris Chester Center on October 1st. 14th. On October 14th. So before the end of the year, we would like to have a resolution, and then the work would follow in the normal process of Wayne's shop, if that's possible.
Okay, thank you. And just want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues. You know, as Harrisburg resident who's had an opportunity to attend many of the events that you and your organization have put on, particularly one that comes to mind was the review for the colored troops. I think it's important that we recognize and highlight the contributions of African Americans in the city of Harrisburg and what we've done to continue to improve Harrisburg despite the odds. So I am thank you for your work, and we'll work with Wayne to make sure that we can coordinate for the dedication.
Thank you very much, sir. I would just like to end by saying I get to sit at the table, and so I'm honored tonight to have our executive committee with me, because they're the ones that make the work happen. And I speak for the chorus tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Just moving on, we have the Community and Economic Development Committee. I will turn the meeting over to Mr. Madison.
Okay. The first resolution for the Community Economic Development Committee is Resolution 67 of 2021. Mr. Petrowski, could you read the resolution into the record?
Yes, Resolution 67 of 2021 is a resolution of the Council of the City of Harrisburg supporting and protecting the rights to organize PROACT, which provides a generational opportunity for the labor movement and a framework to increase pay and protection for workers.
Yeah, I'll be presenting this to my colleagues. Full disclosure, I am employed by the Pennsylvania AFL-CIO, but a national AFL-CIO is advocating for the Senate to pass the PROACT. It has passed the House with bipartisan support. Senator Casey is a co-sponsor of the legislation. Mr. Tsumi has not formally said where he is at currently, and he is probably a no. But the organized labor community is trying to go to local municipalities, counties, to see if they would be willing to endorse the PROACT. And I'll just touch on a little bit what the PROACT would do. If passed, essentially it would make it easier for workers that are not currently in a bargaining agreement to become or part of a union. If you're not familiar with the process as it stands now, it's extremely cumbersome. Most workers that want a union don't do it out of fear of retaliation, and rightfully so. While legally an employer cannot fire you for trying to form a union, many find ways to do that. And the NLRB is not fully funded to the extent that it should be. That's the National Labor Relations Board to really go after these bad actors, these bad employers that are penalizing workers for trying to form a union. So the PROACT would shore up and make it easier for workers again to form a union, hold those that are stopping folks from forming a union more accountable. There's been some big organizing campaigns, most notably with Amazon. And when you look at what the steps for those workers to get a union approved or a contract approved, it's pretty daunting. So this legislation would make that easier for workers again to organize at a shop like an Amazon. So I'm encouraging all my colleagues. It's simply just done these for some other for other legislation. It's just simply to say that we support and encourage the Senate to pass the PROACT. And, yeah, I'll just open it up for any questions. Start to my right, Councilman Daniels.
No questions.
Powers?
No questions, thank you.
Green? Okay, with that, we'll move forward resolution 67 for a vote at our next legislative session. Okay, next we have resolution 60 of 2021. Mr. Petrowski, could you read the resolution into the record?
Resolution 60 of 2021, a resolution approving a preliminary final land development plan to construct a 49-unit multifamily dwelling affordable housing project on 5 parcels located at 1008, 1012 North 6th Street and 429 and 441 Hurst Street.
Good evening, Dave Clapsaddle, Deputy Director, Planning Bureau. Just to recap a little bit for you, this project is 49 units, 100% meet the affordable housing criteria. 100% of them will be age restricted to provide senior housing as well. This comes with you with a staff recommendation of approval. The Planning Commission also unanimously recommended approval. And from there, I know the applicants are here and their engineer as well. And if there's any questions you have, I'd be happy to answer them for you, Mr. Chairman.
I know the applicant is present. Do you have anything to add?
Nothing except that thank you so much for the opportunity to appear in front of you. This has to do with the land development approval of our community. I am more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
Your name, director.
Ava Dolphin.
So for me, I know President Williams, key council person, some safety concerns. You had a chance to talk with her and address some of these concerns.
I can tell you that Blaine Stoddard, who testified last week, had the opportunity to meet Council President Williams at the site immediately after the work session, the legislative session last week. I can report that they had, according to Blaine, a very positive meeting. I know that they conferred on the matter.
Okay. I didn't have any further questions. I know a lot of the safety concerns were addressed from my perspective, but I'll open it up to my colleagues if they have any additional concerns or questions. And I'll start, given that's regarding housing.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I guess I would like to ensure that President Williams is fine with the conversation or whatever was discussed with Mr. Stoddard just to move forward, because I do think that she raised some valid safety concerns.
Yeah, I think in this instance, because it's the city council president, the key concerns, she sets the agenda. So if we move forward and she the concerns were not addressed, she simply just not moved the resolution forward, which I hope she did not do, but it's unfortunate she was sick. But yeah, I'll move to Councilwoman Green.
Thank you, Councilman Matson. At this time, I don't have any further questions.
Okay. Council Majors.
Yeah, so no further questions. And I guess just one for the the last meeting we talked about the lighting plan, which didn't necessarily have to be approved. That's still just the case, right? We don't need to do any additional thing on lighting. There's just some of the other concerns that were raised in terms of how this whole process is going forward. Is one of the conditions, I think.
That's correct. What I can tell you is that what the staff report reflects is that this meets all the standards of the zoning code and the SALDO. Second, by condition, the applicant was to turn in a lighting plan and a landscaping plan at the time they came in for permit. They have actually done that early and given us a chance to look at it early. I spoke with the applicant's engineer today about the lighting plan, and it does conform to code standards for lighting. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, it does, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, and no further questions. I read through all the additional conditions from some of the issues from Capital Region Water, and they'll all need to be addressed. So no further questions. Thank you.
Councilman Davis. Hearing no further questions, we will move this resolution for a vote at next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That concludes the community and economic development.
All right, thank you. We're going to open it up now for public comment. For the work session, I will start to my left. Is there any public comment to my left? In the middle, any public comment? And then to my right, is there any public comment for this work session? All right, seeing none. Any old business? New business.
Yeah, just one thing. I had a few uptown residents reach out about a facility, I don't want to use their name, that's sort of been a cause for some concern because of the way it's essentially scrapping cars. And, folks in the community feel like they haven't been above board with some of the things they've been doing. And I know that the city is taking some action, and there will be a zoning meeting to address some of these concerns. But I just wanted to let the folks in Uptown know that I'm working closely with President Williams on this issue and hope to get it resolved with this actor in the future.
All right, thank you. Any other new business, council members? Just again, one additional note. I think as in my role as Public Works Chair, there's just been a lot of I guess questions and concerns that I'm hearing from residents regarding our sanitation pickup. I think there's one question that I definitely received, just want to bring up in this setting. So in terms of our ordinance, when we do trash pickup, the start time, I guess a couple of residents were complaining that folks were starting a little too early. I just don't remember the time. I believe it's 6 a.m. according to our ordinance when they can start picking up in residential areas. I just have to verify.
A few things. One is I believe it's 5 or 6 a.m.
Yeah,
I think it might vary to parts of the city.
Right.
The zone.
Residential versus.
But also, and it has been discussed here at different points, when some of the things were modified with the commercial accounts, I know that for pragmatic purposes, the commercial pickup started earlier because of to avoid traffic, to avoid other issues. So I think they're starting as early as 4 a.m. on the commercial pickups, and as early as 5 to 5:30 on the residential. But I could get that confirmation out of Public Works if you wish, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that'd be great. I'll send it emails a follow up. One other piece I want to bring up. Again, just hearing rumblings of hirings, and again, it would be nice to have someone from the administration. This is necessary for the solicitor, but there are questions that arise in our community that would be great to have someone from the administration here. And I guess, and I know we've all sent messages in the past, and have publicly, requested someone be here. And again, this is just another formal request to have, someone, whether it's business administrator, mayor, anyone that can speak to some of the other matters that are definitely coming before all of us that we would like to have addressed. So that's seeing if there are any other new business before council, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. I move. Ms. Madsen, a second.
Second.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.